Stood up U-turns, slow speed riding, they're basically the same skill set. Welcome back to MiniTip Monday and this guide to doing stood up U-turns well. Stood up U-turns is a super dense topic to try and teach in a short video. The basic principles of clutch control and throttle control and how you operate the movement of the bike are identical to a sat down U-turn. We made a video about that recently, which I'll link in the corner of this video, whichever side that is. This video is predominantly going to be about body position, foot peg control, and handlebar control. Now, most of that also presumes that you've got a good understanding of basic off-road body position and the more advanced concepts of movement patterns. I've also done videos about that. I'll link one of them in the corner and the other one down in the description so that you can watch those if you have no idea what I'm talking about. In this video, we're going to go down into some more details about how and why you should be moving and what the end result of that movement is trying to achieve. When it comes to talking about stood up U-turns, really we're trying to cover two bases. The first is learning to keep the bike upright. When you want to go around a corner, you need a motorcycle to lean over. And when we're going at slow speed, gravity is the primary acting force. So if we don't have some force to act against it, the bike will fall over. Now the only thing keeping this bike up is me acting on it as a force to stop gravity from making it fall over. The second part of this is good human movement. Human movement and how we should move well is a pretty well documented science. It's not an unknown quantity, but that doesn't mean all of us move well. When it comes to doing a U-turn or any off-road motorcycle riding, a huge part of learning to do it well is learning for your body to move in good patterns and to repeatedly do it correctly and precisely. When it comes to doing better U-turns, what you're looking to achieve is to use your body as a counteracting force. As I said before, when we turn a bike, the bike has to lean over a little bit. And so we want to learn to use our body weight as that counteracting force by A, making sure that our body is in the correct position to do that, and then B, learning to transfer our body weight effectively through the controls of the bike. So our primary controls are handlebars and foot pegs. So for this, it's majority going to be by learning to put all your body weight or the right amount of body weight through the foot pegs. There are really two different positions you can be in to do this effectively. They're ultimately quite similar and they have their places in your riding technique for different reasons. Another factor that's going to affect this quite a lot is how big you are and how much you weigh, because that determines a little bit how much force you can enact over the bike. It's basic physics. If something weighs more than something else, you have more power with gravity. In position one, you can see our model has their heels relatively down, their legs relatively straight, and their hips outside the line of the bike. This allows their body to work as a counterweight by putting their body weight down through their legs and predominantly into the outside foot peg. That is keeping the bike upright. Now to do this, that heels down, legs straight position is generally the better way to do things, has a lot of benefits. The first being, the straighter your legs are, the less energy you are expending to stand in that position. On top of that, it gives you really good direct power transfer from your body weight and your pushing down motion into the foot peg. There's no flexion from the leg. We're not losing strength by holding an awkward position. On top of that, it also lets you maintain good balance between the front wheel and the back wheel pressure. When we're stood nice and upright and in a comfortable position for this, it's really easy to control how much weight is on the front wheel. That's a lot of positives, a lot of good reasons to do this way. So the other thing that works really well with that riding position is that it lets your hands be on top of the handlebars. When your hands are on top of the handlebars, your elbows can go wide, which lets your upper body follow the line of the handlebars and lets the handlebars turn. On top of that, one of the other big elements of control that we've got, as well as putting pressure through those foot pegs, is downward pressure on the handlebars. When your hands are on top of the handlebars, we can then use that downward pressure as a kind of counteracting to our foot peg pressure. So we've got direction change even if our body is set in one position. That means if I overweight the outside foot peg, I can compensate a little bit or make the bike turn a bit more, and so on. If you want to understand that theory a little bit more, the best way is to ride in a straight line and take one of your feet off the foot pegs when you're stood up. You'll feel straight away that either you veer off into the bushes or you have to counteract that pressure on the foot peg with a hand downward on the handlebar. There are a couple of limitations and considerations with this kind of riding position. The first is it isn't fixed. You don't put your body in one position and then everything magically happens around it. It's much more of a dance, especially when the terrain and the conditions aren't consistent. The second part is that there is a limitation with the size of the person and the bike that you're riding. If you're a smaller person on a bigger bike, you can't exert as much force over that bike as a bigger person can. Or if you were riding a smaller bike, it's physics. If you weigh less, you don't have as much physical weight to put through the foot pegs. So you might find that you have to move your body a little bit more. The other limitation is that sometimes, especially I think this applies to adventure bikes, you can overweight the front of the bike by having a lot of handlebar pressure on it. And sometimes you need to take that away, which means you need to move backwards and outwards a little bit more to not overload the front wheel and push it. So the movement pattern as you start to ride, or if you encounter those two limitations, you're a smaller person, you're trying to stop the front wheel pushing, or you need a bit more force towards the outside of the bike to counteract something that's going on, like a bump in the ground. That position change is then a little bend in the knees and your hips moving a little bit further outside the line of the bike. This is not a dramatic movement. This is not some kind of crazy position where we're doing something really weird. This is a small tweak to improve the power going through the outside foot peg to maintain balance. So the cues for doing this well are all the same. I'm still going to try and keep my outside heel down, still keep my legs relatively straight, and let my bum and my hips come down to the outside a little bit. Everything else stays the same. Hands on top of the handlebars, looking where I need to look, and so on. That's the basic principles of doing a U-turn stood up. You might have noticed in this video, I haven't covered any of the other elements of doing a great U-turn, where you should be looking, how you should be using the clutch and throttle, and so on, because it's too much detail for one video. I've done another video all about those elements. You can find that link in the description below. If you've enjoyed this video, you just love Mini-Tip Mondays, or you want to learn way more about how to ride off-road and some really useful tips that I've picked up over the years, then you might want to check out my Patreon page. We've got all of that stuff on there, and we couple that with a podcast that covers a lot of broader, more in-depth subjects with experts about being a better motorcycle rider, being an adventure rider, whatever it is you want to learn. We've probably got great podcasts on it. On top of that, I've also got some really nice clothing in the web shop. It's worth checking that out. I am wearing one of the jumpers today, but it's really cold out, so I'm not going to take my jacket off and show you. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and remember, life's better when you're riding.